Hello friends, my name is Thomas. I am 42 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I have lived in a mountain town in Montana, quite far from the center, where during winter the roads are covered with snow for weeks, and the connection with the outside world is completely cut off. My brother Elias is 35 years old. The two of us live in a large, single-story farmhouse inherited from our father, built with thick stone on the lower part and wood on the upper part. Our lives pass between the barn and the house. We are engaged in farming and livestock breeding. Our barn is attached directly to the back wall of the house. This way, in winter, the body heat of the animals passes through the thick wall and warms our rooms, at least a little. Neither of us is married. After losing our mother and father years ago, we were left alone, just the two of us in this big house and in this freezing silence. Livestock farming is a difficult profession. Our work starts in the earliest hours of the morning and continues non-stop until the deep, freezing darkness of the night. You cannot neglect feeding the animals, giving them water, or cleaning their stalls. Our entire day passes among the smell of manure, straw dust, and the sound of the animals breathing. On the night when the incident happened, everywhere was extremely cold again, literally freezing. For those who do not know Montana's winter, it is hard for me to describe. When it snows, it does not fall gently and romantically like in other places. It combines with the wind, turns into a blizzard, and hits your face like needles. That night, as darkness fell over the mountains, an incredible storm had broken out. The snow had reached the lower edges of the windows, and all of the few houses in the area were buried in their own silence. Outside, you could not see anything at all. Shortly after nightfall, we had finished our work in the barn, put hay in front of the animals, and refreshed their water. Elias, exhausted, had barely managed to throw himself inside the house. I locked the heavy wooden door of the barn behind me and went in after him. Inside, the house was warm thanks to the fireplace. As usual, coffee was brewing on top of the fireplace, and our cups were ready. Elias was lying on the couch, flipping through channels on the television. But because the storm affected the satellite, the image kept getting static. I sat down in my corner next to the fireplace, stretched my hands toward the fire, and tried to warm my numb fingers. The wind outside was hitting the eaves of the roof and circling around the house as if it were whistling. At that hour in that storm, no one around here would step outside. Neighbors would not even visit each other. Everyone would spend the night in their own warm room, by their own fireplace until morning. Just as I stood up to pour the coffee, there was a knock on the door. This was not an ordinary knock. It was a heavy, solid Arabic dada, Arabic krat, Arabic ba that was loud enough to overpower the sound of the wind. Elias dropped the remote from his hand and looked at me. There was the same confusion in his eyes as in mine. It was close to 11 at night. In this storm, at this hour, I couldn't make sense of who could be coming to our door. Moreover, our dogs on the farm, especially the two large mastiffs in our yard, would raise hell the moment they sensed a stranger. But outside, there was no sound at all except the howl of the wind. "Brother, who could it be at this hour?" Elias said as he got up. His voice was uneasy. "Hold on," I said slowly. "Probably someone passing by. I wonder what's going on at this hour." I walked along the cold floor of the corridor toward the front door. I pulled back the thick iron bolt behind the door and opened it slightly. Instantly, a knife-like cold and snowflakes rushed inside. A man was standing on the threshold. He was of medium height, thin, wearing only a light black coat. I was astonished at how he hadn't frozen in that thin coat in this storm. He wasn't even wearing a hat, and he had no gloves on his hands. His face had turned pale from the cold. But there wasn't the slightest tremble on his lips, nor any reaction in his body to the cold. His eyes were as dark as the night. His gaze was fixed directly into mine. "What's going on, my friend?" I said in surprise. "Did you get stranded on the road in this storm?" The man slightly bowed his head. His voice was calm, smooth, and incredibly flat. "I am a guest of God. I was stranded on the road. I am looking for a place to take shelter until the storm passes. For the sake of God, would you let me in? The customs here are clear. You never turn away someone who comes to your door, especially in such cold. Outside meant death. If he stayed out there another 15 minutes in those thin clothes, he could freeze to death. Trying to suppress the strange unease inside me, I opened the door completely. "Come in, my friend, come inside. You'll freeze in this weather, go ahead." The man stepped over the threshold. As he passed by me while entering, I felt a strange stillness in the air. Despite the freezing cold outside, no coldness seemed to radiate from him. It felt more like the heavy, suffocating atmosphere of a room that had been closed off for a long time. I shut the door with difficulty and bolted it. Elias had come to the doorway of the room with the fireplace and was watching the man carefully. "Welcome, brother," Elias said, gesturing to a place. "Come sit by the fire, you must be frozen." The man entered the room but did not go near the fireplace. He sat in the single armchair near the window in the corner of the room. He seemed to be deliberately staying away from the fire. He did not take off his coat. Under the dim yellow light bulb illuminating the room, I could see his face more clearly. He had sharp cheekbones, dark eyes set deep in their sockets, and a completely expressionless face. "If you want, give me your coat, I'll hang it over there. Sit closer to the fire so you can warm up," I said as I reached toward the coffee pot. "Are you hungry? Would you like me to prepare some food?" The man turned his head toward me. He did not blink at all. "Thank you, I am not cold. I will keep my coat. I am not hungry either. I do not want food." "How can that be?" Elias jumped in. "You came off the road in this weather. A person would be frozen stiff, starving. My brother will serve you a bowl of hot soup. Then we'll have some coffee." The man looked at Elias. A brief coldness appeared in his gaze. "I said I do not eat. I have no need. I do not drink coffee either. I will just sit." His voice was still flat, but the certainty at the end of the sentence echoed in the room like a command. Elias was upset. He looked at me. I shrugged. We were not in the mood to force anyone to eat. I poured a cup for myself and one for Elias and sat down. A heavy silence fell into the room. Normally, when a guest arrived, especially someone stranded on the road, where they came from, where they were going, where they got caught in the storm would be talked about. A conversation would start. But this man was not speaking, just sitting in the corner, staring fixedly at the coffee pot above the fireplace. To break the silence, I made a sound as if clearing my throat. "Where do you come from? Where are you going, my friend? Did your car break down on the road? Our farm is quite off the main road. How did you find this place?" The man answered, without taking his eyes off the pot. "I'm not coming from anywhere and I'm not going anywhere. The roads are closed, you know. That's why I'm here." His answer was so nonsensical that Elias and I exchanged a glance. The man was either mocking us or had lost his mind. If he wasn't coming from anywhere and wasn't going anywhere, what was he doing here in the middle of the night in this storm on this mountaintop? And if he didn't have a car, it was impossible that he had walked miles in those thin clothes. "What's your name, brother?" Elias asked. There was obvious tension in his voice. Elias wasn't as patient as I am. He got angry quickly. If he saw something off, he didn't hold back. The man slowly turned his head toward Elias. This time, a thin, mocking curl appeared at the corner of his lips. "My name doesn't exist, and I don't need names. You accepted me as a guest. Let my name be guest." "What do you mean you don't have a name?" Elias said, slamming his cup onto the table. "Are you mocking us? You came to our door in the middle of the night. We welcomed you. You don't eat, you don't drink, you don't tell your name. Where did you come from to end up at our farm?" "Elias, enough, son," I intervened. I didn't want the situation to escalate. The man was tired. The storm must have clouded his mind. Don't push it. Then I turned to the man. "Brother, I'm sorry. Take care of yourself and rest. Let's see tomorrow what's what." The man hadn't reacted at all to Elias' harsh outburst. In fact, his mocking smile seemed to enjoy Elias' anger. He shifted his gaze from me back to Elias, and from that moment, The stagnant air in the room turned into a suffocating, tense atmosphere. "Your brother is tense," the man said. His voice was a little deeper than before, because he carries anger inside. He has been carrying the burden of this heavy work for years. You became the head of the house as the older brother. Your word carries weight, but he is always in your shadow. He cleans the barn. He deals with the animal's waste, but you are the one selling the goods at the market and keeping the money. Deep down, he is filled with resentment toward you, Thomas. The words made my blood boil. How did he know my name? He hadn't asked. We hadn't told him. Even worse were the sentences he spoke about Elias' inner world, about our brotherhood. Things no outsider, no stranger could possibly know. And yet, the words weren't entirely false. I knew Elias sometimes carried a silent frustration toward me. We had never even talked about it between ourselves. Elias jumped to his feet. His face was bright red. "What nonsense are you talking about, man?" he shouted. "Who are you to try to come between us? My brother is my life. No money, no wealth, nothing could ever change that. Get out of our house." The man didn't even move. Elias' anger didn't affect him. He just kept looking into Elias' eyes. "You're shouting because you know it's true, but this life is not meant for you, Elias. That girl, you wanted the girl who lived down in town. Your older brother didn't allow it. So the property wouldn't be divided, the order wouldn't be disturbed. He didn't let you marry. You wasted your youth in this barn, surrounded by the stench of manure." The words hit the room like a bomb. Elias had wanted to marry a girl 5 years ago. Because of a feud with her family, I had opposed it. Elias had resisted at the time, didn't speak to me for days, showing his anger for a long while. But eventually, he had calmed and accepted it. This matter had remained a buried wound for years, rarely even spoken about here. How did this stranger know about it? Things were getting weirder and more chilling. "Enough!" I shouted, standing up and walking toward the man. My fear had turned into a fierce anger. "I don't know who you are, but you've crossed the line. We welcomed you into our home and you're trying to interfere. How do you know our names, our troubles?" The man turned to me. The bottomless darkness in his eyes was now even more pronounced. His expression had completely changed. The calm, quiet guest was gone, replaced by someone supremely arrogant, all-knowing, who took pleasure in crushing whoever stood before him. "I only speak what is," he said, emphasizing each word. "People lie. They lie to themselves. They lie to each other. You are living a false life inside this wooden house. Your animals outside are rotting just like you." "Hands off my property," Elias roared. He tried to move toward the man, but I grabbed his arm to stop him. It was slowly forming in my mind that this man was no ordinary person, not a normal human. His whole body was rigid. His chest didn't rise or fall when he breathed. Since entering the room, I hadn't seen him blink once. He just smiled at Elias' move mockingly. "I am not touching your property, I am speaking the truth. In the farthest stall is that yellow cow you trust so much. The calf growing inside her is already dead. Its insides are full of pus. It won't survive until morning and it's poisoning its mother. While you sit here drinking coffee and telling brotherhood stories, your livestock is dying and you don't even know it." The yellow cow was the most valuable animal on the farm, and she really was pregnant. 2 months remained until her birth. His words were so certain, so self-assured that I paused for a moment. Could it be true? But it was impossible. He hadn't entered the barn. He hadn't even seen the animal. But how did he know about the yellow cow? "You're lying," Elias said, his voice now more filled with shock and fear than anger. "You're lying just to cause trouble. Get out of this house. I don't care about the storm. I'll throw you out into that snow myself." The man slowly stood up. Standing, he looked far taller and more imposing than when he had been sitting. For a moment, the room's light flickered. His height seemed to reach the ceiling. The hem of his black coat didn't move even slightly despite the heat from the fireplace. "You cannot throw me out, Elias," he said slowly. His tone had shifted from the normal human voice to a metallic, resonant voice, as if multiple people were speaking at once, echoing and deep. "You brought me in. You opened the door. I said I am a guest of God and you accepted. Before I entered, that door was closed. Now that door only opens when I want it to." His words made the air in the room feel colder than outside. The crackle of the fire had stopped. The wind's howl outside was no longer audible. It felt as if the entire world around us had frozen, trapping us inside this room. I couldn't find the courage to walk toward him. My arms hung at my sides as if weighed down. "What do you want from us?" I asked, unable to stop my voice from trembling. "If it's money you want, we'll give it, but leave our house. Just leave us alone." The man's face tightened. He took on a look of disgust. "Money? Your little pieces of paper mean nothing to me, Thomas. I came here to watch your rot, to expose the hidden hatred you feel for each other, the secrets you keep. Because you humans are weak. It only takes a small spark to bring out the filth inside you." At that moment, from outside, from the back wall of the house near the barn, a sharp, agonized bellow rose. This was no ordinary animal sound. It was like the scream of a living being skinned alive, uninterrupted, ear-piercing, making your hair stand on end. Elias' eyes widened. "The yellow cow," he whispered. The man remained still. That mocking smile lingered on his lips. "Aren't you going to check? Or should your brother go, Thomas? He's always the one going to clean up the mess." Elias ran toward the door without looking at me. I immediately followed him. We crossed the corridor and quickly pulled the latch of the outer door. The storm outside was raging with full force. Snow and wind hit our faces like a slap, but the animal's agonized bellow drowned out even the fury of the storm. We waded through the deep snow and reached the barn door. Elias struggled to push the barn door open. As we stepped inside, both of us froze at the scene before us. The barn was in chaos. The other animals were thrashing as if they could break their chains, attacking in all directions. A terrifying atmosphere of panic filled the air. And the yellow cow, the source of that harrowing sound, was lying in her stall. Legs absurdly stiff in the air, convulsing. Her belly was unnaturally swollen, as if inflated with a balloon. Her eyes seemed ready to pop from their sockets, and foamy, blood-mixed fluid streamed from her mouth. "Brother, what's happening to her?" Elias shouted, dropping to his knees beside the animal. "What's wrong with the yellow cow? What happened all of a sudden?" I ran to his side. I tried to touch the cow's belly, but it was as hard as stone. She slammed her head to the ground in pain, letting out that dreadful, unending bellow. The man's words from the room echoed in my mind. "The calf growing in her is already dead. Its insides are full of pus. It won't survive the night and it's poisoning its mother." How could this be? Every word he said had come true. A feeling of indescribable horror gripped me. As we watched helplessly, a sound rose from inside the house, from the room we had left. It was laughter, but not human laughter. Deep, smooth, rolling laughter that seemed to mock us, further enraging the animals in the barn. Elias jumped to his feet. His eyes were wild. He grabbed the large iron pitchfork leaning against the wall in the corner. "That man did this," he shouted. "Whatever that immoral man did, he did it to our livestock. Let go, brother, don't hold me. Look at what this madman has done." "Elias, stop," I shouted, but he ignored me. With the pitchfork in hand, he burst out of the barn door, running toward the house through the snow. I left the yellow cow's heart-wrenching agony behind and chased after my brother. Elias' eyes were blinded by rage. Facing that man in that state would have been our gravest mistake. Whatever that thing in the house was, it wasn't something that could be stopped with a pitchfork. Out of breath, I reached the house door amid the storm. Elias had already entered and reached the room's doorway. As I stepped into the corridor, I saw him hesitate as he entered the room, the pitchfork clattering to the floor. My brother's shoulders slumped, his body frozen in place. I approached from behind and peered over his shoulder into the room. The man was no longer sitting in the corner chair. He was standing, but his body was no longer like it had been when we left. His face had completely transformed. The skin on his face was stretched, his cheekbones protruding as if they might tear the skin. His jet black eyes, even in the faint light of the room, looked like dark pits. But what truly froze my blood was his posture. His feet were not touching the ground. He hovered about a foot above the floor, suspended in the air. The edges of his coat fluttered as if invisible winds were passing beneath it. By now, we knew this man was not human. Elias tried to mutter prayers to God with a trembling voice, but his tongue failed. He couldn't finish a sentence. The man's head tilted slowly and unnaturally to the right, as if his neck were broken. In that echoing, multi-layered voice he spoke. "Come, Elias, come on. Stop hiding behind your brother. Haven't you learned to stand up for yourself yet? Come, and I'll show you how false your courage really is." We froze at the doorway. The heavy clatter of the iron pitchfork that had fallen from Elias' hand echoed in my ears. I grabbed my brother by the elbow and yanked him back. Facing that floating, neck-broken figure, I bit my lips to stop from losing my mind. The metallic taste of blood filled my mouth, but I barely felt pain. The scene before us was beyond what a human mind could comprehend. The laws of physics, the world we knew, everything we believed in had shattered at that threshold. Even though I held Elias' arm, he couldn't step back. His eyes welled with tears, his breath caught in his throat. He could only whisper, "Brother," in a voice like a child. The grown man who had hunted wolves in these mountains, endured the harshest winters without complaint, now seemed a 5-year-old child, utterly helpless. The hovering figure slowly glided toward us. It didn't walk, didn't step, it merely slid on that invisible wind. The skin on its face was stretched so tightly that its eye sockets were completely engulfed in darkness. When it opened its mouth, no tongue or teeth were visible, only a void of absolute blackness. What was this thing? "Why are you running?" it said, that echoing, multi-voiced tone giving the impression of many speaking at once. We were only beginning. You, Thomas, the so-called protective brother, were going to discuss how you stole your brother's life, how your father, on his deathbed, forced the inheritance under your control. Those words struck my chest like a sledgehammer. I remembered the last days of my father before his death. When his illness affected his brain, his consciousness was unclear. I had handled the title deeds at that time. Yes, I had taken everything under my name, but not to deceive Elias, only to prevent my inexperienced brother from mismanaging the property. My intentions weren't malicious, but I had always kept this from Elias. He still believed the property was entirely under our father's name. Suddenly, Elias turned to me. His fearful eyes were now filled with deep suspicion and heartbreak. "What is he saying, brother? What inheritance? My father's deeds." "Elias, don't listen to him," I shouted. My voice sounded weak against the oppressive weight filling the room. "This is not a human, it's a demon. It's trying to turn us against each other. Don't listen." The silhouette hovering in the air shrugged mockingly. "Humans are always like this," it said, face toward us, neck still twisted at that strange angle. "When they don't want to hear the truth, they blame the invisible, the supernatural. Yet the real monster is inside you. Elias, your brother, uses you like a laborer." The man turned to me. The abyssal darkness in his eyes was even more pronounced now. His expression had completely changed. The calm, silent guest was gone, replaced by someone utterly arrogant, all-knowing, and taking pleasure in crushing anyone before him. "I only speak what is," he said, emphasizing each word. "People lie. They lie to themselves. They lie to each other. You are living a false life inside this wooden house. Your animals outside are rotting just like you." "Don't touch my property," Elias roared. He tried to rush at the man, but I grabbed his arm to stop him. It was slowly becoming clear in my mind that this man was no ordinary person, not someone to be trusted. His whole body was rigid. His chest didn't rise or fall when he breathed. Since entering the room, I hadn't seen him blink once. He only smiled at Elias' movement, mocking, almost taunting. "I'm not touching your property, I am stating the truth," he said. In the farthest stall, that yellow cow you trust so much, its calf inside has already died. Its insides are full of pus. It won't make it to morning and is poisoning its mother. While you sit here drinking coffee and telling tales of brotherhood, your livestock is dying. You had no idea. The yellow cow was the farm's most valuable animal, and it really was pregnant, only 2 months from giving birth. The certainty in the man's words froze me for a moment. Could it be true? But it was impossible. He hadn't entered the barn, hadn't even seen the animal. Then how did he know about the yellow cow? "You're lying," Elias said, his voice more filled with shock and fear than anger. "You're just lying to cause trouble. Get out of this house. I don't care about the storm. I'll throw you out into the snow myself." The man slowly stood up. As he rose, he looked taller and more imposing than when he had been seated. The room's light flickered for a moment. To my eyes, he seemed as if he could touch the ceiling. The hem of his black coat didn't move even a fraction despite the warmth coming from the fireplace. "You cannot throw me out, Elias," he said slowly. His voice had changed from that plain human tone into a metallic one, resonant and echoing as if multiple voices spoke at once. "You let me in. You opened the door. I said I am God's guest and you accepted. Before I entered, that door was closed. Now that door only opens when I wish it to." His words turned the air in the room colder than the outside. The crackling of the burning coals had ceased. The fire extinguished in seconds. A bone-chilling cold filled the room, more extreme than the storm outside, making it hard to breathe. The light bulb flickered, dimming and brightening intermittently. Everything was spiraling out of control. In the midst of that pure terror, a single refuge came to my mind. The sacred prayers my mother had taught us when we were children and afraid. I knew I had no other weapon, no other means of defense. My lips trembling, I began to recite the prayers aloud, as loudly as I could, stumbling over words and choking on my own fear. But as I continued, I felt the paralyzing terror inside me break just slightly. As the first lines left my mouth, the figure hovering in the room paused. The swirling hem of his coat slowly lowered. His multi-voiced, mocking tone abruptly stopped. I continued, relentless, repeating the prayers in succession, forcing my breath, eyes tightly shut. I had no other choice but those protective words. Then the being hissed, "Silence." Its voice came deep, guttural, and hoarse. The confidence had vanished, replaced by pure rage. "Shut your mouth," it shouted. When I opened my eyes, I could see that its power was waning. I continued the prayers even louder. The room's oppressive, suffocating smell, a mixture of naphthalene and damp, old earth, lingered. I grabbed Elias kneeling on the ground by the collar. "Get up," I shouted, pausing the prayer for a moment. "Get up, we're leaving here." Elias didn't resist. His body was rigid, but I lifted him with all my strength. Without daring to turn my back on the entity, I dragged him backward down the corridor into darkness. The being didn't follow. It stood in the center of the room under dim light, watching us with its hollow, dark eyes. I don't remember how we reached the outside door through the corridor. The storm swallowed us as soon as we stepped outside. Compared to the deathly cold inside, the real winter chill seemed almost like a blessing. Elias trudged through the snow, stumbling repeatedly. I guided him by the arm toward the barn door. We couldn't go back inside. That place was no longer ours. We opened the heavy wooden barn door and rushed in, slamming it behind us. Inside, it was pitch dark. Only the restless breathing of the animals and the clinking of chains were audible. I pulled out a flashlight and lit the gas lamp in the corner. The first thing I saw illuminated by the faint light was the yellow cow lying in the farthest stall. The animal was lifeless, its swollen belly frozen, foam from its mouth solidified. Everything the man had said was true. Elias collapsed onto a bale of hay, burying his face in his knees. He didn't speak a word, only his shoulders shaking. I sat beside him, placing my hand on his shoulder, but my hand hovered midair. The words the being had spoken had built an unbreakable wall between us. My brother now doubted me. Perhaps he was right. Everything I had done to protect him had turned into betrayal in his eyes. That night we sat in the barn, surrounded by the stench of manure and hay, speaking not a word to each other, only listening. Outside, the wind pounded the house, threatening to rip the barn roof off. At every sound, we flinched, expecting the entity to enter. I held a scythe handle, eyes fixed on the door, endlessly reciting prayers until morning. Time seemed frozen. Hours passed like a lifetime. Finally, a faint gray light filtered through the small window at the top of the barn. The storm had eased. Morning had come. Elias, still on the ground, whispered without looking at me, "Do you think it's gone?" His voice was exhausted, broken. "I don't know," I said, swallowing hard. "I'll check, you stay here." I slowly slid the wooden latch. Pushing the door open, I saw snow piled waist-high. The wind had stopped. The mountains were covered in that familiar, blinding, deafening white silence. I looked toward our house. The front door was wide open. Snow from the storm had painted the corridor floor white. I stepped cautiously through the snow and into the house. Peeking inside from the door, I saw that it was colder than outside. The chair in the corner was empty. The fireplace had gone out completely. Even the ashes had frozen. The iron rake Elias had dropped lay on the floor. No trace of the man, no trace of the demon remained. My gaze fell on the old mirror on the opposite wall. Its surface had cracked from top to bottom. I went outside, circling the house. No footprints, no tracks, like the man had never been there, never emerged from the storm. Only our own tracks too, and from the barn remained. That day, Elias and I barely managed to drag the yellow cow out of the barn and buried it in the creek bed far from the farm. Elias avoided me all day, and as soon as he finished, he locked himself in his room. After that day, nothing was the same. The house, those thick walls, felt constricting. A few months later, Elias packed his things and left for the city, staying with an acquaintance and working at a factory. He never contacted me again. I remained alone in the huge house, weighed down by memories and the horror of that night. Over time, I realized that the being at our door was not merely a demon or a spirit. It had come to expose the darkest secrets, the deepest wounds inside humans. It did not need to touch our bodies. By bending the truth and whispering venomous words, it had destroyed a family, 2 brothers. Now, when winter comes and the storms lash Montana's mountains, I lock the front door twice. I try to ignore the wind, because I know that some guests who knock from the darkness do not come to warm themselves. They come to extinguish your fire completely. You listen well. On stormy nights, never trust any stranger at your door just because they claim to be God's guest. Say your prayers. Do not neglect them. Because when some doors open, what enters is not just cold. It's your past, your sins, and your deepest fears stepping through the threshold. The story ends here, friends. May this beautiful season bring you happiness. God protect you. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. See you in the next one.